messed up my blending there. Sorry, everyone. And welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Murata, host of the program, and it's nice to be back with you here on hashtag ELB, episode 126. I do want to give a shout out and proud member of the Education Podcast Network and all of the podcasts that they have for educators and leaders around the country. So happy to be involved with that group and happy to be on with you. I took a little break this week, focusing on some stuff that we have to get done, and had to postpone John. I was supposed to meet him a while back when I was supposed to go to Missouri, but we are going to meet John Fitzgerald here in a little bit. He is the Missouri Assistant Principal of the Year, and I'm really looking forward to meeting him. Let me pull that off there. There we go. Here in just a moment. So great to see you. Great to be back on the program, and excited to talk today. You know, there's so much going on with schools right now, so much going on in our country, and just the stress level of people's feelings about, you know, the end of school and all that has happened with COVID. So I wanted to share just a little bit of advice, right? John and I are going to talk about plans that are in our schools, and but just a little something to keep with you, right? A little something to share with someone who's maybe stressed, share with someone who's thinking about giving up. And from my friend, Dr. Rob Gilbert, I love it. It helps me out. They're called the 5 SWs, okay? And the 5 SWs are just a mindset that'll kind of help keep you going, or like what I like to say is keep rolling, right? From my friend Dan Spanauer. So the 5 SWs are: sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. So what? Someone's waiting, so stick with it, right? I'll say it one more time. If you're watching live, you're watching at home, you're friends of John in Missouri, you're watching. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. So what? Someone's waiting, so stick with it, right? And us as school leaders, us as parents, us as educators, we don't get it right every time. We're not perfect, right? And we do make mistakes, and we got to go on to the next one, the next person, the next conversation, the next email, and we do a better job. We get that one if we stumbled or if we failed at that task that we were on. So I'm a believer in that. I don't beat myself up when I make mistakes and things like that. And I think that's important also to have that mindset. So I wanted to share that with you. But more importantly, I do want to bring our guest on. I'm really excited to meet John, and we're going to bring him in here now. John Fitzgerald, Assistant Principal of the Year. Here he is. John, welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond. Oh, you're muted. I think I should unmute you. What do you think? What do you think? It's good to have our guests unmuted. What do you say, John? Can you hear me?
Thank you for having me, and
there you go.
Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, and we were supposed to connect in March on my visit out to the Ozarks out there, and that got canceled, where you were going to be honored as Assistant Principal of the Year in the state of Missouri. What did that award mean for you, John? And tell us a little bit about you winning that award.
It really meant a lot. I didn't see it coming at all. First, I won the St. Louis Regional Award, which then advanced me to Missouri State. And then I won the state. And I frankly, a joke I tell a lot at school, but I really believe it, is I say I'm not even the best assistant principal in my building. And to get honored like that is, you know, really cool, especially when you don't see it coming. When I literally just got called down for, I believe they said that they needed me in the front of the building, which is normally some kind of emergency call, or that there's a student issue or something like that. So to respond to it and then get to have a positive surprise at the end was pretty nice.
And did they have a surprise for you out there, like a banner and balloons and stuff?
Oh yeah, they had a bunch of my students, my wife, my parents. They had cake. A lot of my fellow teachers and friends from the building were there. So it was, again, thinking you were responding to a fight or something of that nature, and then getting to walk in and see your wife and your parents and a bunch of your fellow coworkers there to honor you was really great honor. And then when I won the state award, they tricked me again in a similar fashion. So I got to experience it twice, actually.
That's awesome. And congratulations to you and your family. And, John, I know we're in the servant business of serving others and leading others, but I do want to ask you, what do you think of the attributes that you've demonstrated over your time as an assistant principal that they nominated you and that you won? What are some things that you exhibit that people like about you? Do I lose you? Am I losing you, John?
I think that I am a little more personable. I think I'm a little bit more personable than a lot of assistant principals have been, and I tend to be a little more friendly and down to earth. I believe that's one of my better attributes. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit later, but I was a teacher in the building for 2 years and created a lot of relationships with teachers prior to becoming a principal, and those have carried through, and I've worked to maintain those positive relationships. I think that's a big part of it. I think being open to ideas and working with teachers to make sure that when they have ideas that they're supported, that we think, to use the traditional term, think outside the box. And when a teacher does have an idea, have a culture of yes and say, yeah, let's follow up on that. Let's see if we can do that. And it's led to some really great things that have happened to Pattonville for our staff and students.
Awesome. And congratulations again on that. And you mentioned your high school, Pattonville. Tell me a little bit about, what happened with your shutdown and what are some of the challenges now that you and your leadership team are facing in terms of the end of the school year and some of your planning for what we don't know lies ahead?
Yeah, so I think like most people, or at least most schools, the shutdown came pretty quick. We were in school, and basically Sunday night, they said we were going to have school Monday and Tuesday, and that we were going to go into an effective 3-week shutdown, which obviously has turned into the remainder of the school year.
Yeah.
One thing I would say, and this is kind of a compliment to a lot of other schools as well, is Pattonville was uniquely structured to handle this better than most. We are a one-to-one school where all of our students have MacBooks.
Wow.
We've been like that for 8 years now. And as a result, we've also built the infrastructure to support that. So that means that our teachers had that PD in terms of how to use digital education. Our teachers have had experience with Google Classroom and all of the digital tools that we're using now. So we were, by my account, pretty far ahead of the curve in terms of being able to switch to a digital learning environment. But that being said, we're still trying to figure out graduation and 1,000 other little things like that, just to ensure that we can service that for our students and make sure that our students get those experiences. We've since moved graduation to July, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to have something that resembles a traditional graduation ceremony to celebrate the class of 2020. And then just other than that, looking forward, just kind of playing a big waiting game right now.
Yeah, so many questions, right? And I was going to open our show to talk about the challenges of trying to answer questions when you don't know the answers. But I decided I wanted to share those 5 SWs. What do you think about that, John? What are your thoughts on the 5 SWs in terms of that keep rolling attitude?
Oh, 100%. It's that do the work mentality, and you need to. Right now, frankly, we don't know what next year's going to look like at all, and it could look like it does now. It could look like a 50% capacity, 25% capacity. We could have, some days these students come, some days others. We might have some students that select to stay online, and frankly, it's mid-May, and we have to plan for all of them right now, so that we're developing that system, and so that when we do know what next year is going to look like, we're able to move quickly and make sure that we're putting it together as best possible for our students.
Yeah. And if you're watching live, I'd love for you to leave a question or a comment for John. And again, the Missouri Assistant Principal of the Year, what a great accomplishment. John, the assistant principal job is a hard job. You've been doing it a number of years. What would you say you've learned are some of the most important points of leadership in that role over the past few years?
I missed part of that, but I think you said what I've learned most in my current role.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we're having a delay, or if you can't hear me. I'm sorry about that. Just your job as assistant principal. It's a challenging position. What have you learned about leadership in that role? Are you able to get me, John? Can you hear me? Or are we losing?
Well, first of all, I got you there.
Okay,
we're good.
Sorry.
I'd say that the one of my big takeaways in terms of things I've learned, the first is, again, trying to be personable with your staff and make sure that you're having positive relationships with them, and that you have that relationship where they feel comfortable talking to you, coming to you with ideas, things of that nature. The other thing, and I talk about this a lot, that you learn real quick when you become an assistant principal, is that effectively most things really aren't crises. And it took me a minute to figure that out, because I remember thinking first year or two as an assistant principal, I was highly anxious about everything and really worried about 1,000 little things. And you realize that if you just handle things rationally and think through things, even emergencies, that it makes a massive impact on you as a principal and a leader. And the thing that I actually see this in my normal life, where, you'll be somewhere and, a kid, we had a basketball game a while back and a kid broke his leg and everyone was freaking out about it. And for me, that's something you respond to once a month at the high school, where some student gets injured, and you just, you just have to take it, think about it rationally, and figure it out. And that's the advice I give to new administrators as well, is don't panic about everything, because first of all, I can't live like that, and secondly, it affects your decision making in a very negative way when you start overthinking and over worrying about everything.
Yeah, so true. And in thinking about that, one of my favorite quotes is, from Dr. Bird. He's a friend of mine. It's not a crisis, it's an inconvenience, right? So many people's inconveniences, they're trying to make your crisis, and that's just not the case. Yeah. John, are we on a delay? Are you
Yep.
getting you can hear me?
I'm getting you pretty good.
Okay, good. Yeah, I think there might be a little delay of me coming through, and that's okay, and we'll get through it. But if you are watching live, please leave us a question or comment for John. So, John, you've been assistant principal for a number of years, and the natural next step is a principal's job. I know we're in a crazy time of COVID and possible budget cuts. But is that something that you're looking for? Is that a goal of yours, to become a principal one of these days?
Yeah, I would eventually like to become a head principal. I'm very happy in my current role. I have a number of responsibilities, and I like what I'm doing. And frankly, it's just a matter of kind of waiting for the job that I want to come around. I don't want to apply for just anything. And again, I love Pattonville. I love my current position. So at the moment, I'm very happy where I am, but I suspect that at some point in my career, I'd like to move up.
Yeah. And your current principal you admire, you consider him a mentor. Joe, I don't want to pronounce that wrong. How do I pronounce that? Dobrnik, yeah. And he's been a mentor for you, and someone you've looked up to. Tell me about what leadership characteristics your principal has taught you.
Yeah, so Joe hired me. He had come from another local district. He was a principal at Pattonville for a year prior to hiring me. And so he was still fairly new to the building, and I was obviously new to being an assistant principal. And Joe's just really good about, he's highly professional. He has a really good thought process about things. Like when he makes decisions, he can explain to you the logic behind them really excellently. And I found that was important, that when you make a decision, especially one that impacts people, being able to rationalize it and explain it and go through your thought process process is really important. Another thing that was really good with Joe too, that I realized in retrospect, was that he didn't do a lot of hand holding when I was a new assistant principal. He pretty much told me, like, this is a job that needs to get done. You need to go do it. If you can't handle it, let me know. But otherwise, go to work. And that sounds funny, but it's really important to realize that, you need to kind of let people learn it a little bit on their own. You can't just hold their hand the whole time. And I've definitely seen in other schools where that has happened, where the principal does kind of walk through and micromanage would be the term for it. And frankly, Joe was pretty good about, hey, this is something that needs to get done. Go do it. And rise to the challenge kind of thing. And I legitimately admired that, because in retrospect, that was very important to my and other people's development as administrators.
That's awesome. And that's great to hear about, letting you lead, right? Your dad was someone you also mentioned when I asked you about your mentors. And tell me about your dad and your relationship with your dad and in terms of your leadership.
Yeah, my dad was not. I'm a second generation. I'm a second generation educator on my mom's side, but my dad was a CPA, and for most of my life, he worked in some kind of leadership role in the business world. So whether he was a CFO for a company that made credit forms, the old carbon copy forms that you used to use whenever you would charge a credit card, and then later he worked for a roofing company as their technology director. And as a result, I still got to see, leadership's leadership, whether it's in a school or at a roofing company or at a credit form company. So I got to see him interact with his staff. I got to hear the difficulties that he had and think about those. And really, again, in retrospect, most of his problems are not that dissimilar from the problems or the challenges that we've had. But other than that, I just learned a lot. My dad's one of the most generous people you'll ever meet. He's one just incredibly nice, very personable, and just learning those characteristics and trying to live up to them has been a very valuable piece of learning from my dad.
Yeah. And I agree with you, right? It doesn't matter the field. It's people, it's your relationships, it's how you treat people. And you mentioned generosity with your dad. That's great. And I know you're a dad yourself. You have 3 little kids, and you talked a little bit about your time fishing with your kids and some things you're enjoying with your kids. So good for you, John.
Thank you.
Yeah. Impressed to hear that you have a one-on-one MacBook program, right? That's impressive. But you also have some great tech ed programs that you help develop at your school. Why don't you tell me a little bit about those programs and what they've meant to the culture of your school, as well as opportunities for kids?
Yeah, so we're really proud of some of our career tech ed programs at Pattonville. We have a computer science program that I think has got to be among the best in the nation. We have a very talented teacher, Jeremiah Simmons, who has really built the program over the years. And we were kind of dealt a challenge early on when we decided we wanted to have computer science. And it was, do we want to go out and get a canned curriculum? Do we want to go out and hire a teacher? And we kind of rolled the dice. And Mr. Simmons was one of our best math teachers. And we rolled the dice and said, well, let's put him in the computer science classroom and see how he does. So taking a valued teacher out of a STEM field and then moving him was, at the time, pretty risky, but he's really built an amazing program. And they've, in fact, if you go on the App Store or the Google Play Store, you can actually download the Pattonville School District's app, which was student created from start to finish. It's student maintained. And that's something, most districts of size go out and pay big money for their apps, and we had our students do it.
Wow.
We have an amazing biomedical science program, 4 years, where students basically leave ready to, go pre-med and have some college experience as well before they leave.
Wow. And
then we're also really proud of, we have a wonderful certified nursing assistant program where every year we've graduated 25 students who receive their CNA certifications before they graduate from high school. So they're ready to go into the field. We just certified 25 more nurses this year.
Wow.
And especially, with current circumstances, it's a big point of pride to be able to say, oh, we're putting people into the healthcare field. We're putting people into these fields that are of high need. So super proud of those. And it's great too, going back, years later, and you see these kids that graduated in 2014 and now they're, working on the COVID floors, or they're working, in the field trying to help in our current circumstances. So that's it's a nice reward for putting together those programs and seeing those programs flourish.
Yeah. And what is their day like? Do they do half day traditional classes? Their PE, their Spanish, their French, and then they go into, the nursing program. How do you structure that in your building?
Yeah. So in the fall, they do clinical work at the high school, where it's a fairly traditional classroom environment. They have a mock ER with mannequins, hospital beds, and all of that fun stuff. And they just practice, they learn the field, and they do the book work. They do every November, I volunteer to let them shave me, because they need to learn how to shave their patients. And it's always frightening and terrifying, because most of the time the student has never shaved a face, and they're really kind of overly cautious. And they take the biggest problem is that they take so long that your face starts to dry out, and then they're tearing you up. And then in the spring, once their fall work is done, they go out and they go on site. Most of them are on site about half a day, and then they come back to the high school. That obviously looked a little different this year, but the students were able to still complete the coursework and their clinical hours and take the test and finish out. So, but they work at they work at nursing homes, they work at hospitals, a variety of healthcare facilities.
Wow, that's fantastic. They use a straight razor?
Oh no, I bring in my Mach 4 and make sure that it's a brand new blade. Because especially in the field, they're using the disposable razors, which are not quite as kind and forgiving. So
yeah. And why did those programs flourish, and why did those opportunities flourish where maybe one like the pharmacy tech that you spoke a little bit about didn't take off or had some issues? What is the difference there that happened?
Yeah, we've had so one thing we've noticed is that you're always kind of competing. When you have these programs, you're competing with each other. Was one of the first things we realized. So, and a good example of that is, we have an engineering program and it's very strong. But one problem that we find is that when you have an engineering program, you're kind of competing with your industrial tech offerings as well. You're kind of mixing with the waters, and you're forcing kids to pick certain paths that are kind of tricky. Mm-hmm. And then we had a farm tech program where students were graduating with farm tech certificates and able to go and work in the pharmacies. What we found was that when we offered biomedical science and the nursing program and the farm tech program, that students had to make choices, and the farm tech was always a lot lower. It's still, we still put out a lot of kids that got to go work directly in their field and went to pharmacy school, but you just couldn't. It was always a struggle to get kids to even take it because they had other options. And then, at one point we had created a life science lab certificate where students would be able to graduate with the ability to go work in labs and other biomed services. And we had a group of 8 really smart kids, and they were going to go off campus to a local community college and work in the labs there to get their experience. And frankly, they were just seniors in high school. And we got to March and April, and they wanted to go play sports, and they wanted to go and be seniors in high school and finish out. And they just weren't going to community college anymore. So sometimes it's just the human element too. It can be trying to fight senioritis, I guess.
Yeah, especially now when we're being remote. But yeah, those things happen. But those programs sound terrific, and kudos to you and your team for running those. Let me shift gears a little bit, John. You're in the St. Louis area. I had a great visit there years ago. I had a chance to go to a Cardinals game. Just experienced that area. Certainly went to the Budweiser tour. But what was that like for you? I mean, we're big football fans here. My son just popped up here. What was that like losing the Rams in your city there? And was that a big deal for you?
Oh yeah, it was terrible. And to be fair, the Rams had been a pretty awful team for a decade prior to them leaving. So,
Mm-hmm.
but we still went to games every year. I've really fond memories, especially of those early 2000s Super Bowl teams, Kurt Warner, Torrey Holt, all them. And
What
even at the end, they were
fastest
starting
show on turf?
Oh yeah, I mean that was my freshman year of college, and every game was thrilling, and then they were good for numbers of years afterwards. And my now wife's my father-in-law was a season ticket holder, so we were going to a lot of those games. And frankly, what happened with the Rams too, that I don't think a lot of people realized outside of St. Louis, was it was pretty suspect the way they left. They kept, oh yeah, if you guys build this new stadium, we'll stay. And then we proposed the new stadium, and then they still took off. So it kind of hurt. And then just as a quick addendum too, we then just this year got an XFL team, the Battlehawks, and my brother was a season ticket holder for them. We went to the two games that did exist, and they were great. So it was like, okay, well, these can kind of replace that Rams experience. And then, COVID-19 hits and the XFL goes under. So it feels like the knife got turned twice.
Wow. So can you still root for them, or you just despise looking at the uniform now?
The good news with that is that we got the cross state Chiefs. So most of us, I think most St. Louisans became Chiefs fans in the either gave up on the NFL entirely or now we're surrogate Chiefs fans.
Yeah, and they're not doing so bad, are they?
But no, I got to think, when the Rams were in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, I think that was 2 years ago. We were rooting pretty solidly for the Patriots, and that was not an easy sell. But considering the Patriots beat the Rams back in the St. Louis days, but the city became Patriots town for a couple days.
Okay, cool. Well, John, let's get to rapid fire. Before we do so, was there anything else that you wanted to share? Was there something that you wanted to say? You got educators, you got leaders watching the program, and was there anything else that you were hoping I asked or that you wanted to share?
No, just it's tough for everybody right now. I'm sure everyone's struggling in different ways and with different things, and just try to, like we said earlier, just try to push through, do the work, and try to get ready for whatever next year looks like, and try to shut down this year as best as possible.
Yeah. I think people are ready for it to be over. There's a feeling of, let's wrap this up. People want to trade 2020 in.
100%.
Yeah. All right, let's get to it. I know we're having a little bit of delay, but we'll do the best we can with it. Last book you read?
I'm currently reading The Hobbit with my sons. And I read Radical Candor a while back, and that was a really good read.
Last movie you saw?
Last movie I saw was probably me and the boys watched Star Wars Episode 9 on Disney Plus.
Okay, and we talked off air. I got number 3 tonight with my boy for his birthday. Favorite place to travel?
Probably, I'd say I would define it as theme parks, whether it's Disney or Universal Studios, but Gulf Shores, Alabama is probably the single big winner.
Nice. Yeah, we love the Panhandle down there. Just got interested in that. How far is that from you?
We're going this summer, theoretically, and it's a 14-hour drive.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, wow. That is a beautiful area.
It's fantastic.
What is something that motivates John Fitzgerald?
Family, and just making sure that kind of going back again, just that do the work. Just you want to do the best job you can day in, day out.
And how about something that gets under your skin? What's a pet peeve? Something that gets to you?
People that complain without proactive solutions. If you're going to come to me with a problem, then please have some idea of, or at least at minimum, want to work with me towards a proactive solution.
Yeah.
Just this is bad. Walk away. That's not for me.
Yeah. I don't need the problem identifiers.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. The most famous person, in your opinion, from Missouri?
It's probably Walt Disney, but I'll throw Mark Twain in there as well.
I didn't know that. Walt Disney. Greatest Cardinal ever?
It's Stan Musial, historically. My sentimental favorite's Mark McGwire, and the best player in my lifetime is Albert Pujols.
Mm. No Ozzie in there? Is Ozzie in the top three?
Ozzie's right up there. He's like my childhood hero.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved going to that the little Hall of Fame and those statues and the whole thing. What a great setup they have for their stadium there.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. We'll have to meet up for a cold beverage at one of those games because I had a great time. Yeah. Most important part of leadership, in your opinion?
Just supporting your people. To simplify it, just making sure that you're seeing what they need and making sure they get it and helping them where they can, and hopefully when you're really doing it right, helping them get better.
Best purchase under $100 that has had a great impact on your life? I
bought a Garmin running watch, I bought one of the really, really cheap ones, but it came in under 100. It had the GPS, and it's the best accountability tool you'll ever have, because when you have it laying around, it's just staring at you. So that's and not just that, it's nice. It just knowing you're making progress is nice too, and it does that for you.
How often do you run?
Lately, every day, but in normal circumstances, it'd probably be about 2 or 3 times a week.
Yeah, it's nice to do these things and have the time to do these things. Something about John Fitzgerald that people do not know about.
I was going back to more of the St. Louis stuff, I was a national park ranger at the Arch for a summer. Got to wear the cool hat and all that, and I was an educational liaison from St. Louis Public Schools. So I worked there, but I got the badge and the hat and all the cool stuff, and basically worked in their museum as effectively a tour guide. But I got to go up in the Arch and be up top at times and just tell people all about it. So that was right before I became a principal. It was just a really fun, quick summer job. I was like 27. So it was just a really fun way. I think I made like $500 for a full summer of work. I mean, it paid nothing, but it was still just a blast.
Cool. We had a great experience, with the Arch too, and the beautiful it lit up. What would you say is the most interesting fact about the Arch? Though? Let me ask you that.
It's as tall as it is wide. Exactly. And I'm gonna botch it though. It's something like 670 feet, but it's exactly as wide as it is tall. Yeah,
and you wouldn't think that. You would think it looks taller, right? Is it optical? Yeah. Huh. Interesting. John, I'm a believer that we all have a book in us. What would be the title of your book?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I'm just gonna opt out and say Fitz, because that's what everyone calls me. So, picture me with Fitz at the bottom, real big.
Short-term goal, 3 to 5 months. It could be personal or professional.
3 to 5 months. I'd say, the biggest personal goal for the next 3 to 5 months is making sure that the next school year is optimal, regardless of what the circumstances are, whether it's, very, very hopefully not all online or anything like that. But if we do have severe restrictions in place, what do those restrictions look like, and how can we still maximize the student learning experience in that, within those restrictions?
Yeah, absolutely. And how about a book recommendation? You mentioned the book you read. Is there a favorite? Is there one that's had a great impact on you?
I'm always gonna be a fan of Lord of the Rings. That's one of my big things, and there are a lot of really valuable lessons in there, even though it's obviously very fictional. Last Day in the Fox Company is a really great history book, and we're going hardcore history nerd here, but if you have any interest in the Civil War, I think the greatest book ever written in terms of that is Battle Cry of Freedom. And it's just a great book, very holistic history of the Civil War. And I sit down about once a year, just start rereading it, even though it's very much just an academic account, an academic summary of the Civil War, but it is a really great read nonetheless. That's
awesome, man. You got all these things you're interested in, the sports, the history, the running, certainly fishing with your kids, John. But this was great. We're gonna wrap up here now. Guys, this was John Fitzgerald, Assistant Principal of the Year in Missouri. We got robbed of coming out to the annual conference out there, so I hope to be a part of that next year and meet you and your team. But keep up the great work at Pattonville.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you stay on the line a moment. I'm going to try to not screw this music up here at the end here. I screwed it up twice already, so let's cue this music back up, and here we go. All right, everyone, we are going to wrap up. This is Andrew Marotta on Education, Leadership, and Beyond. It was show 126, a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Check out John and all the work he's doing. His hashtag is there, John M. Fitzgerald. And again, this was show 126. Signing off, everyone. Continue to go out and do great work in your schools and communities. Bam.